So friends, good evening. Now we are going to start our second day presentations with the great speaker, one of my good friend, Francisco Artes Hernandez. He is with me from Spain. So just I introduce you with our friend, philosopher and a good researcher, Professor Francisco Artes Hernandez. He is an agricultural engineer with a PhD in food technology. He is full professor on food technology and the head of the post-harvest and refrigeration group of the Universitat Politecnica de Cartagena, popularly known as the UPSC University in the Spain, where he chaired the doctorate program on advanced techniques for research and development in food and agriculture. His research interest is focused in the improvement and development of eco-friendly post-harvest technologies to preserve or enhance quality and safety of whole, fresh-cut and minimally processed fruit and vegetables, including byproducts, revalorization under green technologies, and abiotic stresses to increase the synthesis of bioactive compounds. Dr. Hernandez usually acts as an consultant for many leading post-harvest and fresh-cut companies and SMEs concerning post-harvest strategies to preserve quality and safety while trying to enhance the nutraceutical content. He participated in more than 90 European and national research programs and R&D projects with companies. He published over 130 manuscripts in high-impact journals listed in the SCI, more than 350 papers in conferences and other journals, and author of several patents. He participated in several engineering projects, including the design and calculation of several installations. He usually collaborates with national and international groups, especially in R&D and teaching activities. He is an associate editor of the Journal of the Science of Food and Agriculture, Foods, Applied Chemistry, and Applied Science. He awarded with the Isaac Perel Award as the best researcher of the UPC in 2022 and for his scientific production and technology transfer in 2009, 2016, and 2018. Coviran Foundation Award in 2018 and Takata Seed Award in 2021. He is going to deliver his presentation on the topic refrigeration temperature and RH management and modified atmospheres in fruit and vegetable post-harvest. So now the floor is yours, Dr. Francisco. You can start your presentation.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sanil. Thanks for inviting me to this course. It is an honor to be here and try to share some of the main important aspects related to post-harvest management, which is essentially the temperature and the relative humidity, and also some other techniques which are supplemental to this temperature and relative management, which are also very, very important in order to preserve quality of fruits and vegetables that have been already harvested, during the post-harvest, okay? So just for those who are not exactly knowing where I came from, my university is in the southeast of Spain, nearby the sea, and Spain is in the west part of Europe, okay? And I'm the head of a research group which is called the Post-Harvest and Refrigeration, which is dealing with all these aspects concerning to fruits and vegetables. And I've been teaching and researching about that for more than 25 years. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today, it will be related essentially to the temperature and relative humidity management. But we need to look in order to center or to have this target into the factors and which are the main factors affecting post-harvest quality and which are the losses and waste that can be produced if the things are not doing properly. Okay, but not also these aspects in red, which are the ones I'm going to cover today, are the only ones who will be affecting this quality. There are also others that should be covered in other topics. And I will conclude with some future trends and perspectives about what should be done. It should be done concerning these two aspects I'm going to cover, okay? So I'm going to start with which are the main factors affecting post-harvest quality. But for sure, I really know that you are concerned about the fresh produce are living tissues, okay? If they are living tissues, they are breathing, they are releasing heat, they can lose moisture, they can get dehydration, and they can have some E6 that could even induce the death, okay? So knowing that they are living tissues, what happens is after harvesting, until they get consumed, there is kind of a pipeline, this storage life, post-harvest storage line during the supply chains, in where the possibilities of losing quality, of having this kind of holes in a pipe in where you can lose the content, let's say quality, this is how it is usually produced after harvesting. I've never met a producer which is not happy. But the thing is that we, as a consumers, some of the times when we consume an horticultural commodity, we are not really happy about what we have just bought. And what we want to do is trying to see if there are several techniques after harvesting, so it is post-harvest techniques, in where we are able to decrease these quality losses, which are succeed in several steps during the supply chains. So what we first need to do is to try to realize which are the main environmental or let's say internal factors which are affecting the post-harvest life. And there are several, there are not too many if we really want to focus on which is the problem. But for sure, among those we can identify, there is one which is critical, which is the most important factor by far, which is temperature. Temperature management, it is by far, as I said, the most important factor we need to look for in order to preserve the quality and also safety that fruits and vegetables have once they have been harvested. Okay, for sure, the maturity stage is very important. We need to decrease mechanical damages. We need to prevent from contamination. But also another environmental factor, or the second one more important, is the humidity, the relative humidity. We do not want our produce to get dehydrated. Okay. And there are also another supplemental treatments like controlling ethylene and other volatile organic compounds, or even others that you may see in another topics of this course. But for sure, what I want to show you today is how important temperature, relative humidity are, and also what's happening with the atmosphere, with the gases of the atmosphere in the surrounding of the produce once they've been harvested. Okay. One slide that probably could illustrate very good what I'm going to talk about is this one that I have borrowed from my professor, Dr. Adel Kader, that for sure I think that you have heard about him, okay, from the University of California in United States. If we have our two most important factors in the optimum range, we can have a very high relative life, okay? That this relative life with these two factors, if we applied all these supplemental treatments that you may have known about, these disinfection treatments, the 1-MCP, ethylene control, a modified atmosphere packaging, whatever other treatments, that you need to take into account that they are supplementary to temperature and relative humidity, which means that these two factors are the most important factor. Because If this temperature and relative humidity, they are out of the optimum range, the recommended range for each of the products, even though we will apply all these supplementary treatments, we will not get a relative shelf life as far or as high as it should be, just taking into consideration the two more important factors for post-harvest storage of fruits and vegetables. Okay, this is very important to know. After you have cared about these two factors, you can think about which are the supplementary treatments that you can have for your products in order to extend a little bit this shelf life. And how important is shelf life? How important is temperature for shelf life? Well, it's quite difficult to assure, but for example, we can say something like 70% of the success of the getting a prolonged storage life could be due to temperature, and 50% trying to decrease the water loss in order to have an optimum relative humidity in the surrounding of the produce. Okay, and the supplementary treatments, they are mainly focused on trying to delay the senescence. Which are those supplementary treatments I'm talking about? It's controlling the physiological gases of the atmosphere, ethylene removal, or trying to decrease on other volatile organic components, sanitations, or chemical or via biocontrol, etc. Okay, and when we modify the atmosphere with packaging, we can cover supplementary to temperature these optimum conditions in order to try to reach the highest shelf life as possible for each produce. What other things are important? It's very important to know that 1/3 of the food it is produced, it is thrown away, it's not consumed. This is something that is not sustainable. Okay, we need to try to add technological tools in all the steps of the supply chains in order to avoid these huge food losses that it has been produced. And no matter where the country is, okay, it's no matter if it is a developing country or a developed country in where you can find more losses or waste produce than in others. The thing is that depending on which country we are talking about, some of the food which is not consumed can be lost at the beginning of the supply chain or can be wasted at the end of the supply chains. Okay, but as a medium, in all countries, 33% of the food produced it's not consumed and it is thrown away. So these are factors that they are not sustainable, and we need to try to see if we are able to stop or prevent from quality losses in order to have an extended shelf life and to have our produce with best quality during the most time as possible. Okay, so if these fruits and vegetables they get deterioration, they get lost. Okay, we need to think about, okay, let's try to see if I'm able to identify which are the main causes and try to find technologies in order to try to avoid such deterioration. And the main causes that that fruits and vegetables would suffer in order to increase its senescence or in order to not to get consumed can be for example, the initial quality, the quality in which they've been harvested. It's not a proper one. It's not the ripening that we are used to consume. So this is one important factor we should take into account. Another ones are mechanical damages. Okay, for sure, the decay with, for example, inadequate or if they are not doing any sanitation, it's important in order to prevent from pathological development. But there are two more causes or issues that we are going to cover here, which is, for example, the temperature. Temperature management, as we said, is probably the most important post-harvest factor, or environmental post-harvest factor, and also if there is an excessive water loss, if there is a very high dehydration rates, okay? And also the atmospheric compositions, the physiological gases, the levels of the concentrations of the main physiological gases affecting post-harvest quality, which are oxygen and CO2 that we can control, or ethylene, as we have already said. Okay, and for sure it's the time. Okay, the time the produce has been have been harvested or consumed. Okay, so we know now the causes. Now we can think about how can we avoid these quality losses. How can we avoid them? Well, maturity can be predicted, can be measured at harvest, and can be reasonable. Think about which is the proper maturity I want for a produce according to which is the storage life, which is the purpose of this product. Is it going to be commercialized very near? Or it is long distance? Are they going to be transported to another country? It will have a very long storage period. So maturity should be in accordance of what the produce will be done during this post-harvest life. For sure, we should avoid mechanical damages, okay? And what we have to do is to store at the proper temperature, at the recommended temperature. Again, temperature is probably the most critical factor, as we said. And with temperature, the other important factor was trying to decrease the dehydration. As supplementary treatments, as we said, we have some of them. And among those, we are going to talk today about the physical one, trying to get a modified atmosphere packaging in the surroundings of the produce that could benefit for extending the shelf life and decreasing the senescence of the produce. Okay, these are the topics I'm going to focus again. Indeed, what I'm going to talk about is trying to find this kind of sticks, okay, in order to stop this leakage or these quality losses in this pipeline, trying to repair, okay, these quality losses that they are produced during the post-harvest supply chain, right? So I'm going to focus now firstly into the temperature. We should store the produce after harvesting at the proper temperature, and it should be done as soon as possible. What does mean as soon as possible? The sooner we do, the best results we will have. So just after harvesting, the sooner we are able to do a quick cooling, and there are post-harvest techniques called the pre-cooling techniques, it would be better, okay? And it should be done at a constant rate, which means without fluctuations and above the freezing point, okay? And the question is, why we should cool down these fruits and vegetables after harvesting? Because they are living tissues. If they are living tissues, remember that one of the main things they do is their respiration. Respiration, it's as we do, we consume oxygen. There are some substrates, for example, the main important ones are glucose, and they are releasing CO2, water vapor, and energy. Okay, so with the oxygen, the sugars and other nutrients, they are consumed, and they are producing this energy, releasing CO2, ethylene, and water. Okay, so one important thing of removing or cooling down, it's firstly removing the heat from the field in order to reduce this metabolism, reduce the kinetics of these biochemical, physiological, degradative reactions, in order to try not to speed the process of ripening. Okay, the slower the ripening process, the longer the shelf life of this produce. Okay, so this refrigeration or this cooling will benefit then from reducing losses, reducing quantitative losses. For example, from several physiological disorders. Every time we get refrigeration, every time we decrease the temperature, all biochemical reactions, mainly the ones that they are affecting quality, which are degradative reactions, they are released, okay? They are decreased. And also the pathological disorders. The higher the temperature, the decay is increasing. So if we cool down these pathological developments, okay, they are getting smooth. Okay? And also delays the maturation processes and the senescence. So therefore, the shelf life is prolonged with very good quality. Okay, there are a lot of examples of trying to visualize how the lower the temperature, the highest the shelf life. Okay, for example, this one, which is from Marita Candwell from UC Davis, in where it was reported that the higher the temperature, okay, the lower the days to get the ripening. So you have a very small, a very reduced shelf life due to senescence. In this case, it was broccoli. Okay, it was here, broccoli, you can see. Okay, because it is measured as the days in where yellowing is initiated. Okay, so if you store down at the possible temperature, at the lower temperature possible, above the freezing point, the higher the shelf life in where no yellowing are appear. Okay, that's one important rule that we should take into account at the beginning of this topic. And another important issue was that this cooling should be conducted as soon as possible. Okay, so the sooner we can cool down, the best results we will have. Okay, in that issue, there is a rule about how fast I can cool down, at what temperature I can cool down quickly in these pre-cooling techniques. These are not the normal cooling techniques we use just in room cooling, just in the conventional room cooling. These are specific equipments able to quickly reduce the temperature from the field, from the produce after harvesting, until one temperature in where all physiological and biochemical reactions are being decreased. And there is a rule which is called the 7 to 8 rule, okay, in where it is recommended, due to energetic and economical issues, to remove 7 to 8 of the difference between the temperature at harvest and the temperature it should be stored for post-harvest life. And the other remaining temperature, it could be easily removed once the produce is stored. And in this curve, you can see that it is similar for all produce, because it's very easy to remove heat at the beginning. You see the time? It's very easy to remove heat at the beginning, half of the time, half of the temperature, it is in this time, and it has the particularity that the half of the temperature we need to remove, you will do it at a constant rate. So you can decrease temperature by half from 20 to 10 in, for example, 3 hours, and from 10 to 5, it will be another 3 hours. And from 5 to 2.5 degrees, another 3 hours. Okay, that is easy to see that eliminating or reducing the last heat, last degrees, it will be very time consuming. So it will not be energetically viable or economically, because you need to employ energy. It will not be, let's say, economically viable doing with these systems. And which systems are we talking about? For example, we have a specific cold rooms to do the air pre-cooling by air, forced air pre-cooling. We can do it with water. We can do it, for example, for leafy vegetables with vacuum cooling, or we can do it with ice, especially just for broccoli and some other tubers, but it's not so much used as, for example, air, that it is universal. Okay, and so these are specific equipments to do this quick pre-cooling of fruits and vegetables after harvesting. And once they have been pre-cooled, they can go through the conventional cold storage rooms. And which is the temperature and relative humidity they need to have? First thing we need to know is that not every product will benefit from the same temperature. Okay, we need to divide those that could suffer from temperatures that, even though they are well above the freezing point, the produce, it's not comfortable at all with this, and they suffer from these chilling injuries. Okay, we will see it again. But for sure, we need to avoid the accidental freezing. We shouldn't store them at temperatures below the freezing point. And you can see, for example, that some products, the relative storage life, they are not, they will not benefit from the lower temperature as we may think are, for example, as we said, for broccoli. Okay, in this case, cucumbers, which are chilling sensitive produce or commodities, they suffer from this chilling injury at temperatures of around 7, 8, 10, and their maximum storage life could be at temperatures around 13. And it's not only cucumbers the one who will suffer from this. So at this point, it is very important to know that there are mainly two kinds of produce. Those which are non-chilling sensitive, so they can be stored at temperatures a little bit above the freezing point, avoiding the risk of freezing injury. Okay, and there are another produce that they are chilling sensitive, and probably and for sure they cannot be stored very near the freezing point, and they should be stored above. And how above they should be stored, it depends. Some of them, they could be stored at 5, 7, 10, 13, as we already saw. So at this point, you should look at which produce are which produce are you working with, and you will need to see if they are not suffering from very low temperatures of storage, or they are at some point they are sensitive to cold storage, so they should be stored 5 to 8 degrees, or they are very sensitive to cold storage. That should be storage well above the freezing point, for example, at 12, 13 degrees. Okay, and this table should be taken as a recommendation. This is probably the most important one, the one who is provided by the Post-Harvest Center of the University of California. But you should look with your proper produce to try to see if they are suffering this chilling injury or not, or they can be stored at the temperatures above or below the ones that here is presented just a recommendation. Okay, but it's very important to know that we need to take into account these chilling injuries. Chilling injuries that they are mainly presented as these disorders in where there are depressions in the skin. They are this browning that could be aleatorily presented in the skin, or for example, the banana. The banana is probably one of the most relevant post-harvest produce in where chilling injury is presented. For sure, we have seen which are the effects when we introduce a banana into the refrigerator, which means that this browning that it is occurring in the outside, in the external part, it's caused by the cold storage, by the improper cold storage temperature, and they suffer from this chilling injury. And also citrus, especially lemons that should be stored above 12 degrees, they suffer from chilling injury. Okay. There is one important produce to mention. It's some varieties of stone fruit, because they suffer from chilling injuries which are not very normal, which means, okay, chilling injury in some varieties of stone fruits, they are induced at 5 degrees. The normal recommended storage temperature are 0 degrees. But if you increase a little bit the temperature, you can have the worst conditions for these stone fruits. Even worse than if you store the produce at 10 degrees. Okay, it's really strange, this phenomenon, that it's only produced mainly in some cultivars, as I'm saying, of stone fruit. That was a really problem for the stone fruit market. And in the United States some years ago, they were obligated, they were forced to have this advertisement in where it is saying, okay, you should store at 0 degrees, okay, in where the produce, the physiology, biochemical properties, the pathology, everything is calm down, everything is sleeping, okay, but avoid this killing range, avoid this 4 or 5 degrees, because here is where the produce is suffering a lot. Okay. In any case, if you cannot reach 0 degrees, you will rather should go for these temperatures, because you are not killing the produce, but you will have a faster senescence. That's the reason of increasing the temperature, of course. Okay. And at this stage also, some of the produce who have been, or the commodity who has been trying to introduce in several markets worldwide, for example, the mango, which is also another chilling sensitive produce, they were also promoting this kind of commodity and saying, okay, if you don't know what to do with me, and I don't want to be in the refrigerator below 5 degrees, treat me like a banana. We all know that if you put a banana in the refrigerator, you will have chilling injury, and the external skin will be brown. Okay, so as I said, some of these chilling injury commodities they are promoting in order to see, okay, where to put this one. All right. Well, this stone fruit, as I say, this chilling injury, their appearance can be manifested in several ways. Okay, one, or probably the more relevant one, it's when you find internal browning. Okay, externally the fruit seems okay, and when you cut down, you see browning inside. That's a symptom of that. At a certain point, in some of the steps of the post-harvest life, temperature was not the proper one. Probably temperature has been within this killing range I've just said. Okay, but not internal browning is the only symptom of chilling injury. Another possibility is when this internal browning is located around the stone, or when juice is not present. You have milliness. You try to squeeze the juice and there's no juice at all. Okay? Or it can be manifesting with a reddish color, or losing these compounds in order to manifest this translucency or bitterness. Okay, there are several symptoms of trying to know that this produce has suffered from chilling injury. And in other produce like apples or pears, this chilling injury is manifested not also internal browning, but also with external defects, which are mainly called the superficial scald in these palm fruits, in the case of palm fruits. But also it can be also, as I'm saying, with internal browning. Okay. So, when to know and which temperature should be recommended for each produce, which relative humidity, etc. There are several publications in the literature, but I recommend this one from the University of California because it is an open access, University of Davis, in where there is a huge list of produce. This is alphabetically ordered. Okay, you see, and you can see like 8 or 10 pages with all these the produce with the recommended storage temperature in Fahrenheit or degrees, with the recommended relative humidity that we have not talked about still on that, but we should know that it should be high in order to prevent dehydration, which is the freezing point, and other parameters affecting the post-harvest life, which is if they produce a lot of ethylene or if they are sensitivity to ethylene, and which is the expected shelf life produced. And after that, if they benefit from a modification of the physiological gases in the surroundings with the modified atmosphere packaging or controlled atmosphere storage. So this is a good table in order to have, trying to know a little bit more about the post-harvest life of fruits and vegetables, and especially to look for the ones you will be interested in. Okay. Well, more important things beside that, it's saying, okay, I have done this recommendation, I have put them into cold storage facilities, but we need to avoid practices which are not properly corrected. Okay, we need to avoid from storing just immediately down the evaporators, because some of the water during defrosting, it can be dripping through these products, and it could induce more pathological disorders. Okay, they should not be disposed just in front of the evaporator, because the air over here, it's probably 5 to 7 degrees lower than the temperature, than the air we want in the cold storage facility. So risk of accidental freezing, it could be easily happen in these boxes just very near the evaporator. Okay. So at this point, which can be the challenge for the industry? Well, we have cold storage facilities, we have pre-cooling and these cooling techniques, we have refrigerated transportation, we have refrigerated cabinets at retail sale, at the retail sale. So the thing is, or the most important thing for the market now is trying to see if we are able to monitor the temperature and relative throughout all the cold supply from farm to retail store, because it is the most critical factors, or those are the most critical factors that will affect the shelf life. So if we know which is the maximum shelf life at a proper temperature and relative humidity, and we can monitor the temperature and relative humidity that some of the commodities would have been during post-harvest, we will be able to predict quality, or at least remaining quality. Okay, so these data loggers, they have been improved since many years ago. We know that the temperature is really important, and since 1920s they have been developing mechanical data loggers in order to know which has been the temperature, for example, for the transportation or during cold storage, etc. In 1990s, these data loggers, they were electronical. In 2000s, they were via USB or radio frequency. But now the market has moved through the real-time data. Okay, we move now in a world in where we want everything now. We want to know now exactly what is happening, and there is now some possibility of knowing, for example, if we are exporters and we want to send away our load, our production, trying to know exactly at what temperature they are traveling could be a good idea in order to see that the quality is going to be preserved or not. Okay, and there are equipments that will that can give you such information. And this market is having a lot of developments. There are several people in companies and researchers, etc., trying to work on that. For example, in my university, with the help of people from the sensor division, okay, we've been developing a sensor that is able to predict the shelf life of fruits and vegetables when we have a combination of several environmental conditions, like, for example, temperature, relative humidity, CO2, or other gas compositions, and with mathematical models, we were able to predict which is the remaining shelf life of this produce. Okay, but this is somehow very important for the market. Okay, we're moving now to the water loss. Okay, fruits and vegetables, they are living tissues, and for example, we as people, we get dehydrated, but we have the possibility of drinking water and we get hydrated again. But fruits and vegetables, they can't. So the main thing is trying to decrease the rate in where fruits and vegetables are losing water. Okay, and which is the most important factor? Well, if they have approximately 100% of water, 90 very high percent of water, our main important goal will be, okay, trying to have a very high relative humidity in the surroundings of the produce so it will not get dehydrated. Why? Well, post-harvest weight loss, they have several factors. It's not only one factor we can control in order to prevent from weight loss. This is a very good paper concerning the dehydration from our colleagues from South Africa, and those are resumed. But for sure, probably the most important factor will be the vapor pressure deficit between the inside and the outside, because the water, or the amount of water that a commodity is losing in a certain time, is strictly directed to this vapor pressure deficit between the inside and the outside. And also the exposed surface, but we cannot do nothing with that. This is the surface of the produce. And also is directly related to a resistance coefficient to vapor diffusion. Okay, so which strategy we can follow to decrease these water losses? Imagine a produce at room temperature, 20 degrees, which is approximately with 100% of relative of water content. Okay, and if it is stored at room temperature, which is very dry conditions, at around 40% relative humidity, the vapor pressure deficit is like this. What will happen when we cool down the room and we increase relative humidity, let's say at around 75%? If you cool down a produce which is basically composed by water, this vapor pressure deficit, it gets decreased a lot, which means that if we look into this formula and this vapor deficit is very low, the dehydration will be very low. Okay, this is the psychrometric explanation of that. So the thing is, how can we do it in our facilities? For example, increasing the relative humidity of the cold storage rooms. Okay, they are humidifier systems. Okay, there are systems to increase relative humidity without any damage to the produce. So the higher the relative humidity of the cold storage room, there will be no problem of getting the hydration with the produce. But there are another possibilities. For example, waxing. Several produce, they can tolerate waxing. For example, citrus. For example, some other fruits like apples or palm fruits, etc. Or another possibility is trying to use films like packaging, because when you pack, the water that is lost at the beginning, it gets inside the package, so the humidity inside the package is high. So it will not lose more water. Okay, these are possibilities. And also, I'm sure that you have seen this, that in several retail shops, okay, you've seen how they are humidifying the ambient when they sell the produce without any packaging in order to prevent this dehydration at this final retail scale in the supply chains. Okay, we've seen these most important factors, temperature and relative humidity, in order to store our post-harvest produce, all right? Now I'm going to focus in one of the supplemental treatments we can apply, which is how we can manage the gases or the physiological gases in the surroundings with physical treatments, okay, as a supplemental treatment. Again, let me remark and let me talk again that these are supplemental. This is additional to temperature and relative humidity management. Okay, in order to increase a little bit, you can do this. For those which can be more interested, there are several publications about modified atmosphere packaging of fruits and vegetables. For example, this one that we have published in this handbook of food safety engineering, or some other papers in journals, okay, concerning this modified atmosphere packaging of fruits and vegetables that I'm going to try to resume. This technique is based on respiration of the produce. We've already said that they were living tissues, so they consume oxygen into doing the aerobic respiration, and due to the glucose and other substrates they have, they induce this respiration and they release CO2, water, and energy. Okay, but fruits and vegetables, contrary to what we can do as human beings, they can do the anaerobic respiration. What it is the anaerobic respiration? Oxygen is not present, okay, but the thing is that some aldehydes, alcohols, etc., they are produced as fermentative volatiles. So we need to avoid this anaerobic respiration, okay? So if we need to avoid this anaerobic respiration, we need to go through the aerobic one. And if we are going to modify the composition of the gas in the surroundings of the produce, first of all, we need to know which is the normal composition of the air, okay? The air, basically for our goal, we have two different kind of gases. those which are physiologically active, I mean those that increasing or decreasing their concentration, they will induce a modification of the normal physiology of the produce, or, for example, oxygen, carbon dioxide, or ethylene, or those which are inert gases, those that no matter if there is more or less, there will be no problem into the physiology and biochemical reactions of the produce. Okay, and taking into account about the physiological ones, which are the ones we want to know, and the normal air condition, it's around 25% of oxygen and almost nothing of CO2, 0.03, 0.04, some studies are revealing now, etc. Well, the thing is that at these air conditions, these normal air conditions with 21% of oxygen, the aerobic respiration rate, I mean the normal kinetics for all these degradative reactions concerning the physiology, for example, etc., are doing normal, which is the normal one. But what happens when we decrease the oxygen concentration? If we decrease the oxygen concentration, respiration rates is decreased. And if the respiration rate is decreased, it is better because it is not consuming the substrates, so it is increasing the shelf life, and senescence it can be reached far away. Okay, so by decreasing the oxygen in the surroundings, the products release the physiology, release water vapor losses, release respiration, etc. Okay, so that's the strategy. Let's reduce oxygen. But until when I can reduce oxygen? Because remember that we need to still go through aerobic respiration, which means we cannot get out of oxygen. Oxygen, they need fruits and vegetables to do the respiration. Even though they can get this respiration anaerobic, I don't want the anaerobic respiration because I can suffer from injuries, from fermentative processes. So I need to avoid that. So we'll need to reach a point in where the anaerobic respiration injuries are not present, the produce still is doing the aerobic respiration rate and at a safe point. This is called the anaerobic compensation point. And it will be different from one commodities to another. So this is the minimum one oxygen concentration I can store the produce to have the maximum efficiency into reducing the physiology of the produce. Okay, so there is an important benefit of trying to decrease the oxygen, but could also have some problems or some hazards, because not all commodities respond well to modifying the atmosphere. Not all varieties within commodities will respond well. It should be applied at a certain physiological stage. It should avoid immature fruits or very mature fruits. And we need to take into account which is the corresponding or the recommended atmospheric composition. For sure, as we said, it is a supplemental treatment to temperature. We cannot apply that whichever temperature. Okay, and it also depends on which is the extension of the shelf life that we want to reach, because not by applying this technique you can reach very, very high extensions of the shelf life. But if we do the things well, we have seen that we could be able to delay ripening, to delay the senescence. We can reduce ethylene sensitivity and also alleviate some of the physiological disorders that the produce can have. We can also control decay, because when you not also reduce the oxygen but increase one of the other physiological gases in the surroundings, which is the CO2. Okay, CO2 has a fungistatic action in where more than around 10-12% of CO2 can decrease fungal development and microbial development. Okay, you can have other potential benefits. Well, so some of the benefits, if you apply the right conditions, will be beneficial for the produce. For example, when we decrease oxygen and we increase at a moderate rate CO2, okay, ripening is very much reduced. We can appreciate that. Okay. For this example, when you have normal air conditions with a low relative humidity, you see how in this kohlrabi commodity, leaves are not able to get up, to get stand. Okay, when you increase a little bit, not a little bit, but when you increase up to 90% relative humidity and water loss is not decreased, okay, you see a very important effect. When temperature, relative humidity, and a modified atmosphere packaging is induced, you can observe very visually that it's beneficial for storage this kind of produce. Okay, as an example. Okay, but it is important to remark that these techniques should be done complementary to temperature. We can see here as a control pier, okay, control pier without atmosphere at a certain point of around 2 months of storage. Okay, it is yellow. Okay, it is yellow, but with this modified atmosphere packaging, by lowering the oxygen and increasing the CO2, you can get the retard of the ripening. Okay, you can delay senescence. But it is important to remark that it should be complementary to temperature. If you are not doing at the proper temperature, some of the injuries could appear, like for example this internal browning. Okay, so it means that not every time you will get benefit from using the modified atmosphere packaging, for modifying the atmosphere, because some hazards may be able to appear. For example, aggravating or inducing physiological disorders, as we already have seen, or causing irregular ripening, causing or inducing off flavor or off odors, or increasing the decay susceptibility. Okay. For example, there are some produce which they do not tolerate concentrations of CO2 around 5-3%. They are in artichokes. They are inducing this browning, or lettuce also. Whole lettuce, they do not tolerate concentration of CO2. Citrus also are another produce that they are not tolerating well CO2. So the key point will be whether we will be able to define which is the maximum CO2 concentrations that the produce will allow, and the minimum oxygen concentration that the produce could allow. Okay, remember, this is the key point in order to find the proper modified atmosphere packaging. Okay, and concerning that, we can induce the modification of the atmosphere by two methods. One is when you store in a cold room, in a static cold room, for example, you inject the gases and you kept them constant during all the storage in a controlled atmosphere storage. But another technique, which is the one I'm going to show you now, it is when you pack the produce and you are inducing a modification of the atmosphere inside the produce. When you have a living tissue that it is packed, what it is happening is that oxygen is being decreased here because the produce is taken and CO2 is being released. So it will modify the conditions inside. Well, one of those was reduce oxygen and increase CO2. That was most of the things we want to do for the modified atmosphere packaging technique, okay? And the key will be with this material. This material, this polymeric material, will need to have a certain permeability, which should have a permeability that should be calculated in order to have an equilibrium of the physiological gases that are affecting the quality of the produce. Saying that, whenever the produce is needing more oxygen, there should be an equilibrium, and oxygen, which is 21% outside, should get inside. And whenever there is an excess of CO2 within the package, it should be released out, okay, from the package. Okay, this is the key point. So whenever you pack, at the beginning you don't have CO2, you have 21% of oxygen, which is decreased, and then it should be equilibrated. Okay, you go through an equilibrium, it takes a time, and after that, it should be equilibrating with the respiration rate of the produce and the film package you have selected to pack this. So one of the main questions could be, but is this technique much utilized, is much used worldwide? Probably we as a consumer, we are not seeing, but for example, for long transportation of some produce, it is very, very used, for example, for cherries, for example, for bananas, kiwis, etc. It's quite used at a, let's say, boxes scale, okay, for melons or watermelons. There are several commodities that they benefit from that. And besides the boxes, they can also be done at a pallet scale. I mean, you can pack the whole pallet, need to do some calculations. You select a film with the proper permeability to those gases in order to have the best shelf life, this extended shelf life. And these procedures can be done online, I mean, in the proper installations in where this packaging material, these covers could be implemented, etc. And moreover, it is possible to do the active packaging. The active packaging, it's injecting the target modified atmosphere we want to have inside the produce in order to speed up the process, and just with the proper film and the respiration rate, it could be equilibrated during all the storage period. Okay. Probably this technique, it's not so much developed for whole produce, for intact produce, but for sure it has gained a lot of popularity with the appearance, with the eruption in the market of this fresh cut produce. When you have this fresh cut produce in where everything is discontrolled and you need to try to slow down the deterioration as quickly as possible, it's almost very impossible to do without a modified atmosphere packaging. And as a final part of my class, I want to talk a little bit of this technique, of this, how we can calculate which is the proper film in order to have the modified atmosphere packaging within a commodity, okay? Films can be divided in several categories, okay? I'm not talking about the composition. This is another topic that could be, we can talk about for many hours, because now you know that there is a trend about trying to have these films from renewable sources, and trying to not to use those that they are contaminated because they are not compostable, etc. And so then what I'm going to divide these categories is into how the gases are transmitted from the inside to the outside, okay? And at this point, we can divide these polymeric films into three groups: non-perforated, or those who are perforated with microporous or microperforations, all right? So what's happening? Okay, so for those who can be more interested into trying to explore these relatively easy equations, rather recommend this book, even though that it is for fresh cut produce. It has the equations and the explanation that could be also used for whole produce. Okay, this is the book. Okay, talking about when a film does not have any kind of perforations, okay, that could be composed of whichever material, polypropylene or polyethylene, ethylene, vinyl acetate, copolymers, polyolefins, or whatever, including those from renewable sources, okay? Remember, I'm not talking about the composition, I'm just talking that they are like a solid linear, they are solid films. We need to understand how the gases are moving inside and outside, right? Always we will have an inner part or an external part in where we will have different pressure gradient of a component. In some part there will be more quantity than in the other one, which a gradient is created. And if it is created a gradient, there are laws which are forcing to try to get that equilibrium. And how this equilibrium is produced? There is a unit operation, which is the absorption of this molecule to where more quantity is to where less quantity is, okay? And they get diffused into the solid and then desorted to the other part in where lower partial pressure is present, okay? Until we will reach an equilibrium. And this equilibrium will be stated with the permeability of this material to this component. This is the most important part, okay? So when you go to the equilibrium in where these commodities, they are consuming oxygen, they are releasing CO2 and water, and you place a film, what it will happen is that when the produce is getting out of oxygen, the film permeability to oxygen will let to pass oxygen from outside to the inside, because outside there is a 21% and the inside it will have less concentration, okay? And to CO2, when it is releasing CO2, there will be accumulation of CO2. And remember that we saw that some of the produce, they do not tolerate well CO2. So this film will need to have a certain CO2 permeability in where the excess of CO2, they should be released to the outside, because there is a deficit of vapor pressure between the inside and the outside. In the inside, there will be a lot of CO2, and in the outside, remember, it was 0.03. Okay, and there are two laws, two thermodynamical laws, the Henry's and the Fick's laws, in where we can have some equations that I'm just going to resume them into these formulas, okay? Because we should know which is the storage temperature. We know the produce, so we can calculate the respiration rates, okay? We need to know which is the atmosphere, the target atmosphere we want to reach, okay? We know how much produce we need to pack, and which is the exchange areas, and which is the material, which is the thickness we want to work with. So we will be able to calculate the oxygen transmission rate and the carbon dioxide transmission rate, okay, according to these formulas. For example, the oxygen transmission rate is the respiration rate of according to oxygen consumption, the mass, thickness, exchange area, and the difference of concentration between the ambient and the oxygen. Okay, and this is the carbon dioxide transmission rate. So once you have calculated, you can go to the materials. Remember, whichever the composition can be, but what you should look at, it's the oxygen transmission rate or the carbon dioxide transmission rate in order to fix your expectations and to have the modified atmosphere you want to get. That's the reason why if you go to companies, you can have several films according to which of the produce you are going to pack, okay? But sometimes it is a problem when you go to a company and you decide to go to a technical sheet about which is the film to use, and they only have one data, which is the oxygen transmission rate. That means somehow it has been measured, officially measured at high temperature and low relative humidity, which is for sure those conditions that we are not working with. Okay, so if you don't have the both oxygen transmission rate and CO2 transmission rate, there will be a tricky in where we can try to see if a field could suit your expectations or not. For example, at the equilibrium, we saw that it should be what it is needed by the produce, or it should be exchanged with the field. So when we do this equilibrium with both equations, we will have this. If we see the CO2 transmission rate or the oxygen transmission rate, this is called a coefficient of permeability, okay? And if we see what we have here, it's the respiration quotient, okay? The CO2 produced for each oxygen molecule I am using. And this respiration quotient, when we have glucose as a substrate, which is mainly, it is done like this, it is 1. So this relatively strange equation, it has been converted to equations of a line, okay, in where the slope, it's the inverse of the coefficient of permeability, okay, which means when this coefficient of permeability, when the permeability of CO2 is the same of the permeability to oxygen, you will move through this equation. So if you have a 9% of oxygen, you will have a 12% of carbon dioxide because the sum should be 21, okay? And these are films with coefficient of permeability 2, 3, 6. Okay, at some times you'll see how some of the films, they get you this permeability, this coefficient of permeability. So you will be able to know which are approximately the concentration you can have, but not for all films. They are giving you this data and they give you another data. Okay. Let me just show you this what I've just said into an example. Let's go, for example, for a fresh cut vegetable market. Okay, if we wanna try to see which are the best films for our fresh cut vegetables, first of all, we'll need to know which are the conditions, which are the recommended oxygen and CO2 conditions in order to have our maximum shelf life. And then we can put them into this diagram, oxygen and CO2, and these are our windows of best opportunities. For example, for celery, pepper, leek, tomato, zucchini, okay, they have their recommended concentration. When we fix these lines, which are those equations, we can see that, for example, if we want to do some pepper, fresh cut pepper, we should go with a film that it should have the double of the permeability to CO2 than the one for oxygen. Okay, and if we want zucchini or tomato, we will have 6 times more permeability for CO2 rather than for oxygen. Okay, this is important to know. And what else? We can go to the other groups that we'll have. It's when we have perforations. When we have perforations, we can have a sticker, which is a patch in where those perforations are very, very, very reduced, which are micro poros, which means that are ceramic materials that are included in the film, and the permeability can vary according to which is the material they have used, which is the number and diameter of the porous, etc. Commercially, as far as you know, this is just one trademark, okay, and this is this sticker which is inserted here. It is especially used in very high respiration rates produce, but commercially the price probably it's not helping its development. Okay, what it is being more used is just when you can do micro perforations. But when you do micro perforations, you need to take into account that the gases will not be exchanged through this diffusion process mainly, and they can pass through the perforations very easily. What does it mean? It means that CO2 and oxygen can move freely during these perforations, which means that in all cases, this coefficient of permeability of CO2 divided by permeability of oxygen, it's equally to 1. So you will not be able to reach those target modified atmospheres in where you will need more CO2 than oxygen. Okay, this is very important. And how these perforations are done? Mainly they are done by laser. Okay, via laser, and you can do as many as you want with the diameters that you want, whenever you want, etc. Okay, the equations here are a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to go through that because not only depends on the film and the produce, as we saw with the other technique, because here then take into account that now you have micro perforations which can be with multiple areas, shapes, distribution, length, etc. Okay. One thing important, for example, is what is doing this company, at least for the target of what they are doing, is that they are measuring respiration rate of the material who is going to be packed at that time, and from a solid film, they are calculating how many perforations of how diameter should apply in order to equilibrate the modified atmosphere in the subsequent shelf life. Okay? Okay, so just to be in time, just to conclude, for sure, you should take into account that temperature management is the most important factor, post-harvest factor, to preserve quality and safety of this kind of produce. For sure, we can increase the effectiveness of prolonging the shelf life by these supplemental treatments, but it should be additional to temperature and relative humidity management. And concerning the temperature and relative humidity, I'm quite sure that during these years we will have some development from the industry where how able are we to monitor from farm to store, to the retail store, the conditions of how was the temperature and the relative humidity during the post-harvest life. Because with this information, we will be able to predict, I don't know exactly where, but probably with some QR codes or whatever, able to predict which is the remaining quality that could be very helpful to inform the consumers. And according to these supplementary treatments, for sure it will be a great revolution in packaging. It will go through materials which should be compostable, but the main thing, and it's not having a complete success until now, is that the ones that have been already developed, there is a problem in maintaining the relative humidity and getting those modified atmospheres that were targeted to get into inside the produce. Okay, so it should be more research should be conducted and more development should be released in order to find proper materials to help into this. Okay, that's all. So if you want to ask any question, feel free to ask them.
Yeah, thank you so much for this informative lecture and the comprehensive coverage on various types of the fruits, vegetables, their physiological disorders due to the faulty temperature, relative humidity, and the gaseous compositions. So now I have opened this chat box. So any of the participant having the question or the clarification, they put their question in the chat box. Please read the chat box if there is some questions.
Well, someone is saying about onion. Onion, it's particular, okay, because it can be stored at very low temperatures. Probably you can store them at around -2 degrees, and you need to store them at very low relative humidity because you don't want them to get spoiled, and it is a problem if you store with high relative humidity. Okay, you may find some more information, for example, in the website of Davis, as I said, about conditions more deeply to store onions.
Actually, in onions, there are the problem is the ventilation. So it requires the more ventilation and also the temperature management, as well as it requires the curing. So the most of the practitioners or the production growers, they are not going for the curing. So instead of the pre-cooling, this commodity requires the curing for the 2-3 days at some high temperature of around 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. And after that, the commodity should be placed in the storage.
Yes. So another way of saying chilling injury is a major challenge. Research suggests combining different techniques can enhance fruit resilience more effectively than single treatment. Where chilling injury, it's another topic to talk about that. I'm not sure if you have more presentations concerning that, about chilling injuries, but for sure my recommendation is try not to get very near the chilling injury point, but there are some treatments like hot water treatments or heating treatments, etc., that can also waxing. With waxing, you can prevent from injuries that can be useful to decrease. But my recommendation is to try not to be very near the temperatures in where the chilling injury is causing. The 24-degree control relative humidity should be for the onions.
Yes, it is standard.
Yeah, taking out it tends to get wet quickly. What are the alternatives for quick and user-friendly of farm pre-cooling system? Well, the solar energy equipment could help trying to use water or cooler water. You can use, for sure, these pre-cooling systems, they are very energy consuming systems. Okay, somehow each of you should try to find which is the alternative of how can I cool down the quickly as possible my product. Well, it's up to you also in order to apply these techniques or not, because you should know where your product is going. If you are exported and you want to go through other countries, you will need to reach important shelf life, and for sure, temperature is very, very important. Another one, it's microperforation. Types of materials can we use? Well, I'm not concerned about materials, but whichever of that could be. I mean, polypropylenes, polyethylenes. There are a lot in the market. There are a lot of microperforated films that can be used. Okay. Factors determining the efficiency of microperforated packaging. I would rather say that the perforations are done by laser instead of needles or another system that could have a problem of not having an homogeneity. Okay, what are the challenges in achieving uniform hole size? That's what I was saying. Okay, if your perforations are by laser, they should be more homogeneous, because the key of the system is when you have all these calculations, they are materialized. Okay, they are proper. If you do not stand at the proper temperature, I mean, these equations are not okay. If the holes, the exchange holes with the total micro perforations, if they are not exactly what you have calculated, you will not reach that. So, for example, if you do them with a needle, they are not very uniform. So, but nowadays, most of the more relevant companies selling the microperforated films, they are doing by laser. Okay. Coriander leaves may maintain fresh after harvest 2-3 months. I mean, it's how to maintain leaves 2-3 months. I would say, of course, trying to keep the temperature and relative humidity, and after harvesting, try to cool down quickly. But these kind of leaves probably could benefit from vacuum curing. I don't know exactly. Not much experience about that. Impact of ozone on washing in fruits and vegetables, if fine sites. Well, that's a very interesting question that we could debate about that. Well, ozone washing. Well, ozone is a gas, and as a gas, it's not getting dissolved very well in the water. Okay, so the thing is, when you have ozonated water, you have a very high oxidation retention power. What you are doing is with ozonated water is to have very clean water, so you can prevent the contamination. Okay. Moreover, ozone is a gas which is toxic to workers, to people, and at least here in Spain we have a legislation in where it should be very controlled to work with. ozone is a very powerful oxidant, and for sure it could be used. But if you use it, you should have very, very restrictive protocols and to assure the effectiveness. Okay, we have been seeing a lot of ozone works since more than 20-25 years, and all the world hasn't changed. Okay, the contamination process to ozone. It has some particularities, although ozone, as I'm saying, it's very efficient as a disinfectant, as an oxidant. Okay. Tell about the packaging of leafy vegetables. If we pack in polyethylene, the vapors come around. That's what I'm saying. The material should have a proper permeability to water vapor. Okay, water vapor, in order to prevent this water vapor to move around. And also, if there is this routing because the water vapor comes through the plastic inside, it's sometimes because of the fluctuations of the temperature. As I said, it should be constant. When you get fluctuation of temperatures, what you are doing, for example, when you heat the air, the heated air is able to admit a certain relative humidity. And when you cool down again the air, the water vapor of the heated air cannot admit such quantity of humidity. So what it is doing is to condense, and it is condensed in the film. And that's the reason why you have some drops in the film and could drop down and induce this routing. Okay. Longevity of leafy vegetables. Again, leafy vegetables, for sure, I will recommend a pre-cooling with a vacuum system, and then store at the proper temperature and high relative humidity, avoiding this fluctuation of temperatures. Okay, and nutritional value. Nutritional value, we know that they are the substrates of respiration, some of them, some vitamins, etc. That what we want to do is trying to decrease the kinetics of these reactions, these degradative reactions, in order to prolong them. Okay, you should see if these leafy vegetables are susceptible to ethylene or not. If you have problems with ethylene, because, for example, because it's yellowing, or if they are climateric or not, you should take into account the ethylene, which I have not told anything, because I'm supposing that you will have a topic of ethylene control and ethylene importance in this post-harvest course. And I think I have tried to answer very quickly all these questions. I'm not sure if it's clear enough or not.
Yeah, okay. There is no more questions, and you have particularly answered all the questions. If anyone having any of the query, then they can send me on the email. So I will answer, or otherwise I will forward to the paper. So thank you very much, Francisco. You have found the time for us from your busy schedule, and even you have adjusted your classes and everything for us. So many thanks for giving this insightful lecture on the modified atmosphere's temperature and the relative humidity. Because without this topic, this course cannot be completed, and it is the essential one which we have to be there. Therefore, I insist you to give the talk on this topic. So thank you so much. Now we have the next speaker lined up with us. Very different kind of the speaker, Pramod Halde. My good friend, Dr. Halde, he is the scientist, regulator, then policy maker, advocacy, and everything, and above all, a motivator for the young students and the scholars. So I